The soft rustle of curtains filled the grand bedroom as the golden morning light crept across the marble floor. Ethan Ward, the man the world called the ice-hearted CEO, lay still on his king-sized bed, eyes closed, but wide awake. His chest rose and fell evenly, every movement deliberate. He wasn't sleeping. He was waiting. He had built an empire that stretched across continents, commanded thousands of employees, and silenced entire boardrooms with a single glance. Yet, this morning, he was hiding behind his own eyelids, pretending to sleep, to test one woman, the shy new maid who had entered his mansion only 3 weeks ago. Her name was Lily, barely 24, quiet as a shadow, and painfully polite. She always kept her head bowed, her hands neatly folded, her voice trembling like a soft melody barely heard. Ethan had noticed her since the first day she entered his house. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, in a fragile, almost unintentional way, but because there was something hauntingly honest about her presence. She never lingered near him, never sought attention, never smiled unless spoken to. But one evening, Ethan overheard the other staff whispering that Lily was different, that she would sometimes pause in his room when she thought no one was watching, her eyes filling with something that wasn't fear, but sorrow. He couldn't stop thinking about it. Why would a maid look at him that way, as if she knew a secret even he had forgotten? So this morning, he decided to find out. If you believe that even the smallest act of kindness can change a heart, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Let's spread the ripple of love together. The clock ticked softly. Lily entered the room, her steps light as feathers. Ethan's pulse quickened though he remained perfectly still. He could hear the soft swish of her skirt, the gentle clink of a tray she carried, his usual morning coffee. She always placed it on the bedside table before quietly retreating. But today, she didn't leave immediately. He heard her set the cup down, followed by the faint sound of fabric shifting. For a long, trembling moment, she simply stood there. Then, to Ethan's surprise, she moved closer, so close that he could feel her breath tremble in the air above him. She whispered softly, barely audible, "I wish you'd find peace someday, sir." The words hit him harder than any boardroom betrayal ever had. Peace. The one thing money, success, and power had never been able to buy him. And then she did something that made his chest tighten painfully. She gently reached out, brushed a stray lock of hair from his forehead, and tucked it away like a mother would do for a sleeping child. Ethan almost opened his eyes, but something in her touch stopped him. It wasn't bold or inappropriate. It was tender, human, and heartbreakingly genuine. Then, she took out a small cloth from her apron and began to polish the edge of his nightstand. He noticed her hand tremble as she moved. A quiet sniff escaped her lips. Was she crying? Lily whispered again, her voice shaking, "You don't deserve the loneliness they talk about." "No one does." Ethan's throat burned. For the first time in years, his heart beat not with calculation or ambition, but with something fragile and painfully human. He had lived a life of walls. Every relationship, every handshake, every smile, built on purpose and distance. After his parents died in a car crash when he was 20, he buried himself in business, promising himself he would never need anyone again. The mansion, the empire, the endless noise of luxury, all of it had been a fortress against pain. And yet this young woman, with nothing but a dusting cloth and trembling voice, was walking straight through it. When Lily finally left the room, Ethan opened his eyes, staring at the ceiling. Something had shifted inside him. That night, he couldn't stop thinking about her words. "You don't deserve the loneliness they talk about." Who had said that? The staff? The world? Or was it his own reflection she was speaking to? The next morning, Ethan woke earlier than usual, waiting again. When Lily entered, he pretended to be asleep once more. This time, she didn't whisper anything. But she paused longer near his bedside, almost hesitating, as if she wanted to say something but couldn't. As the days passed, Ethan noticed more. How she flinched whenever someone raised their voice. How she smiled only when no one was watching. How her eyes sometimes looked swollen, as if she cried herself to sleep. So one afternoon, when the staff was dismissed early, Ethan asked his head butler about her. What he learned froze him more than any stock market crash ever could. Lily wasn't just another maid. She had been a top student in literature before tragedy struck. Her father, a security guard in one of Ethan's factories, had died in an accident 2 years ago. The company had compensated the family, but the money barely covered hospital bills. Her mother, too weak to work, relied on her. Lily had taken the maid's job out of desperation, unaware that her employer was the very CEO whose company had once been responsible for her father's fate. Ethan's stomach twisted. He had never even known the man's name. To him, the accident had been paperwork, a tragic but handled case. But to Lily, it had been the end of her world. That night, Ethan sat alone in his study, staring at the moonlight spilling across his desk. For the first time in years, he felt shame, raw and unbearable. The empire he had built with pride was now a mirror reflecting every life he had overlooked. He wanted to speak to her, to say something, anything, but how could he? What right did he have to apologize when he was the reason her dreams had died? The next morning, when Lily entered his room again, Ethan pretended to sleep for the third time. But this time, it wasn't curiosity, it was guilt. He wanted to see if the kindness in her was still real, even after what his company had done. She walked in quietly, as always. She placed the coffee down, adjusted the curtains, and began to tidy his bedside. Then, she looked at him again, her expression soft, tired, but oddly peaceful. "You look less lonely today," she whispered. "Maybe you're starting to dream of something good." He froze. Every word she spoke felt like sunlight breaking through a storm. That evening, Ethan called for her. She entered the grand hall nervously, hands clasped together, eyes down. He couldn't bring himself to look at her directly. "Lily," he began, his voice hoarse, "I want to know something. If you could change one thing in your life, what would it be?" She hesitated, then whispered, "I'd bring my father back. But if I can't, I'd just want to make someone's life a little kinder than mine has been." Her words cracked something open inside him. That night, Ethan stayed awake until dawn. When the sun rose, he made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He called his legal team and ordered a scholarship fund to be created under her father's name, to help children of factory workers get an education. Then, he quietly arranged for Lily's family's debts to be cleared. But he didn't tell her. Not yet. He wanted to see her smile first, without knowing it was because of him. Days turned into weeks. The mansion grew warmer, lighter somehow. Ethan began to eat breakfast in the dining room instead of alone in bed. Lily noticed but never pried. Sometimes, he'd catch her humming softly while cleaning the shelves, and it made him feel human again. Then one morning, he didn't pretend to sleep. When she entered, he sat up, greeting her softly. She froze, startled. "Good morning, sir," she stammered. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hadn't touched his face in years. "Sit for a moment," he said. Lily hesitated but obeyed. She perched on the edge of the chair, unsure what to do. Ethan looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "You once said I didn't deserve loneliness," he murmured. "Why did you say that?" Her eyes lowered. "Because I saw the way you looked at the world, like you were waiting for it to end. My father used to look that way before he died." He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "For everything." She looked up, confused. "For what, sir?" "For the pain my company caused your family." The silence that followed was thick, trembling. Tears welled in her eyes, but she shook her head. "You didn't have to say that. Life happens, and people make mistakes. My father used to say forgiveness makes the soul lighter." Ethan blinked rapidly, fighting emotion. "You're more generous than I deserve." She smiled faintly through her tears. "Maybe, but everyone deserves peace, even you." In that moment, Ethan realized something profound, that love wasn't always loud or romantic. Sometimes, it came quietly, like a whisper that softened the hardest hearts. That day marked the beginning of change, not just for him, but for everyone his company touched. He visited factories personally, spoke with workers, listened to their stories. He became known not as the ice-hearted CEO, but as the man who finally learned how to care. And every morning, without fail, Lily still brought his coffee. Only now, she smiled when she did, and he smiled back.